It's the MyMichelleLive podcast.
MyMichelleLive Health Watch. She's writing a prescription for hope. Here's Michelle.
Hey. Thank you. And thank you very much, Big Voice Guy. Thanks. It's always a good time when Big Voice Guy is involved. Welcome to what we're calling Health Watch Wednesday. Health Watch Wednesday. We like to take on health from a variety of different modalities, a lot of natural health things that you can have at your fingertips. But today, hey, it's just you and me. I don't have a guest today. I just have a lot of information. I'll be sharing with you a wealth of information that I researched. I had some of our team research, and then I researched a little more. And it's all on the vax and reasons why it might not be settled science, that there's things that if you've gotten vaccinated, you should know, and things if you have not, you will want to know. It should not be unquestionable, and it needs debate before being forced on the public. Now, I'm not saying the vaccines are not a great idea. They are a great idea. It's a great thought, and they have been helpful. There's no doubt about that. I mean, some people will have doubt, but vaccines are a great idea. But before this corona vaccine is forced on the public, we need to talk about it. Now, this may be difficult for some of you. It may be enraging, maybe because I'm challenging the narrative, maybe because you've made up your mind, and we don't like to have things that come up that challenge our way of thinking. Bringing new information, research, news, bringing these to light can help us come to the best conclusion and can help us tweak things and make them better. Now, just because I'm challenging the COVID vax and the info, and I'm bringing new information to light, does not mean I am anti-vax, sweetie, okay? I don't like kimchi. That doesn't make me anti-Korean. I don't play rugby. It doesn't make me anti-sports. Please look at this information for yourself. Don't just take my word for it. I don't think it's a good idea to take anyone's word for it anymore where things are concerned. Look it up for yourself as we try to do. No, we definitely do. If I am missing something or misreporting something, go ahead and comment. Now, if it's just about you being angry about what I'm reporting, about me presenting other truths. Keep in mind, two things can be true at the same time. Who knew? If it's just about you being angry, if it just makes you uncomfortable, go ahead and comment anyway. But honestly, my advice is suck it up, Buttercup. Big Pharma makes bank, and many public figures who push this thing are making bank. Fine, but they also have zero accountability. We'll talk about that math today a little bit. Vaccines are a great idea, as I said, but will never be safe and improve efficacy if we do not hold people accountable. Listen to me, and I'm going to say this again. If we don't hold people accountable, if we don't talk about some of the problems, then they cannot get better. Some of the ideas, we don't want to talk about some of the problems. It'll just make people more afraid. That may be. People are already afraid. We've been scaring the hell out of people for 2 years, almost 2 years now, a year and a half. But something else that will happen as well is that we may hold people accountable. We may hold pharma accountable, those who are in charge accountable, and make vaccines safer. So let's start with this. What is a vaccine? Here's the definition. Now listen carefully and you tell me, based on what you know today, if those vaccines are vaccines or experimental drugs being forced on us. I'll let you decide how it measures up with the definition. look up the definition yourself and marry up what you know with that definition, okay? I'm asking you to do some of this work to reconfirm what I'm saying. Don't just take my word for it, please. So, a vaccine definition: a substance used to stimulate the production of, I have to read this, I'm sorry. I'm going to pull it up because I don't want to do it from memory. I don't want to get this wrong. Let's pull this puppy up. All right, here we go. A substance used to stimulate the production of antibodies and provide immunity against one or several diseases. It's prepared from the causative agent of a disease, its products, or a synthetic substitute. It's treated to act as an antigen without inducing the disease. So, based on what you know about this, is that a good definition? And would you call it a vaccine? All right. Now that you've got that in your little head there, I didn't mean that insultingly. Listen to some of the news reports. Real stories. Scientists, doctors that do add more to the story and do challenge the going narrative. It's real information. It needs to be included in the vaccines can be safe and vaccines are good and we want to protect people. That may be true, but these things are if they are true, these things are true as well. So listen to some of these stories. And then you decide.
Brandy Parker McFadden sits in her Vanderbilt hospital bed, unable to stand.
Our youngest is like, are you ever going to walk again? And so, we just reassure him this is extremely rare.
The mother of 3 received her second Pfizer COVID shot April 16th. Hours later, an unusual sensation started in her legs.
That's what created the sense of urgency.
James rushed Brandy to the emergency room at Vanderbilt, and then the unimaginable.
I woke up and I can't move my arms, can't move my legs.
Yeah, she can't move her arms or legs. It seems like an isolated incident. You can also say, oh my goodness, you're showing someone in a hospital bed. It's just one person. The chances are rare. But, we've been seeing these explosive stories from COVID. I think it's important to see some of the real stories from the vaccine. So that may be just one person, but imagine that's her life and she has to deal with this problem. We should know the risks, and we are being experimented on with experimental drugs, right? So we should know as some of the results start to come out, even if they are very, very rare. I kind of want to know, and what similarities do we have? And maybe my doctor and I can make a decision for me and for my health. Now I want you to listen to Dr. Hote. He has been a guest on this show, and this is what he had to say on the study of blood clots. Now this goes beyond just one person in a hospital bed to the majority of people who have been vaccinated. Listen.
D-dimer is a blood test that will show up a recent clot. It won't show up an old clot, it shows up a new clot. And it doesn't tell you where the clot is, it just tells you that the clotting mechanism has been activated. So I have now been recruiting patients from my practice, people that have come into my office and others that have heard me speak about this, and have asked people to do this D-dimer within 1 week of their COVID shot. And so far, and this study is ongoing, these are preliminary results, so far I've got 62% positive elevated D-dimer, which means that the blood clots are not rare. That's what the so-called experts keep telling us. The clots are rare, the big ones are rare, but the small ones are clearly happening in the majority of people, 62%.
62%. Okay, so what does that mean? What exactly does that mean? And does that really hold concern, or is that just explosive information that we knew would be a risk? Take a listen to part 2.
Now, I'll tell you what the real concern with this is. A clotted vessel is permanently damaged. That vessel never, ever goes back to normal. All of the frequent side effects of the shot, which are headache, nausea, dizziness, fatigue, I mean, those literally, you could be having thousands and thousands of tiny, tiny little clots in your brain that won't show on a scan, but they will give you those exact symptoms. The concern is because these vessels are now permanently damaged in a person's lungs, when the heart tries to pump blood through all those damaged vessels, there's increased resistance trying to pump the blood through those lungs. So those people are going to develop something called pulmonary artery hypertension, high blood pressure in their lungs. And those people will probably all develop right-sided heart failure within 3 years and die, because they now have increased vascular resistance through their lungs, and lung tissue and heart tissue and brain and spinal tissue and all of that does not regenerate.
Now, something that is being reported that I haven't delved into deeply, but I'll give it to you anyway, and you may be able to comment or do a little research on that, is that the vaccines can, one of the reasons we're seeing this clotting, what's happening is the vaccine may be changing the shape of the red blood cells, causing them to stick together. So if you think about what's happening here, if we do not talk about that, 62% of those that have been vaccinated may have these heart issues 3 to 5 years down the road. We need to talk about that because there may be a way to fix that or to help it at least. We need to be able to hold vaccine companies accountable so that they can make a better product. We need to be able to protect people so that people can make the best decisions for themselves. We just have a few more. I only had room for so many doctors and so much research, but I want to get this doctor in from Minnesota.
Dr. Scott Jensen, you can go back 15 months. You know what's happened? We have thousands and thousands of deaths reported through the VAERS program that indicate that there is a strong temporal association between the vaccine and death, especially in kids. Myocarditis is an issue, and we are intruding and hurting and devastating a lot of kids' lives. I would challenge just one time for, if you will, legacy media to put on their front page a kid, a 14-year-old, on a hospital bed with tubes coming out of every orifice.
Yeah, and it's something to think about if we're causing some problems. And I'm going to play in a moment from the White Coat Summit, a doctor talking about what we may be doing to children who have virtually zero risk of COVID. In fact, we do know now that the children who succumbed to COVID had a comorbidity, usually leukemia, and yet we want to shoot everybody up. This is from the White Coat Summit.
Well, it couldn't have been the shot. We're too far out. Not if the toxin's still circulating. Not if the toxin's still circulating. The spike is the toxin. Damage to the lungs, like I mentioned. On the left-hand side, healthy lung tissue. Nice spaced out. See, this is what pathologists do. We look at all these cells all day long. It's kind of fun. We're nerds this way. On the right-hand side, see how much more purple and blue that is? That's all inflammation. Why? ACE2 receptors in that lung, spike binding to it, inflammatory response, immune system attacking your own body. Investigational vaccine, they keep lying to the American public by calling it a vaccine. They keep not calling it what it is. Investigational, an experiment on humanity. A spike is a toxin, crosses the blood-brain barrier. Kind of like my brain cells to be where they are and not be blown apart, right? Why in the world would we put a toxin into the human body that's going to disrupt the blood vessels in your brain, allow the spike in there, it'll cause inflammation? And this is science. All the blue on top, those are brain cells. All the blue doesn't belong there, that's inflammation from the spike. What about the kiddos? Heart inflammation, guess what? Lots of ACE2 receptors in the heart. Here you can see on the left-hand side, see those blue arrows around the white? That's inflammation in the heart. That's not normal. That's after a shot. Guess what? Once a heart cell is damaged, it's damaged forever. It doesn't replace itself with another heart cell. It replaces itself with a scar. So you tell me you want to give a 12-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 13-year-old, an 18-year-old a shot, and we see about a 200 times increase in myocarditis in our society right now. stop and think about word.
Stop and think about it for just a moment now. Let me relive this definition of vaccine again. A substance used to stimulate the production of antibodies. A substance that provides immunity against one or several diseases. It's prepared from a causative agent of the disease, its products, and synthetic substitute. It is a product treated to act as an antigen without inducing the disease. Now, this is information that is widely available, but not widely reported. It's true. And we need to talk about this to demand better vaccines, to demand protection, better protection, to give information to anyone who wants to get the vaccine. But a lot of information has been banned. Now, along with banning much of this information from social networks and media, the result may disturb you. Do you hear the beep beep in the background? Sorry about that. I have to have the windows open. It's such a nice day. So some of the results of banning may disturb you. We're creating perhaps a new people's group war. You know, it used to be racism, and now it's vaccinationism between the vaxxed and the unvaxxed. Microsoft, one of the latest on the list, now requiring all employees, vendors, and visitors to be vaccinated. The city of Seattle, in its core, has a list of over 100 bars and restaurants that will not allow the unvaccinated. You must show proof of vaccination if you want the privilege of giving them your money. It's basically saying your kind is not welcome here. Now, I do want to take this to a race place just to learn from history. Do you remember in history when certain people were not allowed in establishments? They had to sit in the back of the bus. They drank from separate water fountains. And I know someone's thinking, oh, yeah, we need to have a vaccinated and an unvaccinated water fountain. That's great. So this week, our Sci-Tech show took on the idea of creationism being racism. Now, I'm not going to go into it much today, but you can go to MyMichelleLive and look in our podcast section, Sci-Tech, and you can get the real information on that. Sometimes we can think of everything as racist. Racist against Black lives today. Those are things we should examine. Racism is nasty. Have I experienced it? Yeah. Much? Not a whole lot. Didn't grow up with any, but have experienced it in my lifetime. Things that we can consider racist that we need to re-examine are things like, dreadlocks, even though the Vikings thought that dreadlocks were all the rage, right? Waist beads, that was one of the latest things. Now, wait a minute. You may want to tell that waist beads are racists against African Americans to the Romani gypsies who belly danced their way across the Middle East wearing hip scarves and waist beads and the like. Anyway, I digress. Creationism. There you go. But do you know that creationism as racism is something that you can look at on our podcast? I don't want to go there. I wanted to get to the race issue. Did you know that one of the largest people groups, in fact, they say it's the largest people group in America. I just haven't confirmed that number, but it's definitely one of the largest. To resist the vaccine is the Black community. I mean, outright resistant. So if you're on the microaggression bandwagon, swirl this around for just a mo. That if you are banning people who aren't vaccinated from your restaurant, would that be considered racist? Now, this is a soundbite that I wanted to play from Breakfast Club. It is Black Americans talking about why, maybe give you a little insight into what's circulating around that community, the kind of information, and why Black Americans are resistant.
If you don't take the vaccine, they don't allow you to register your child in school. That's not true. It's a law. You just got to know the law. You can get an exemption in almost every state except for California because the vaccine industry or the pharmaceutical. Check this out. When people tell me vaccines are safe, do you know in 1986, the Vaccine Injury Act, the pharmaceutical industry was so strong, they got our Congress to indemnify them. You can't even, brother, sue them. If your child die, if your child go blind, if your child go crazy, they cannot be sued. That's when you saw all these vaccines come. When that act was passed, and that's when we saw autism skyrocket, ADHD skyrocket. You got black boys in class, zombies. So when people say they're safe, I said, well, if they're so safe, why won't the pharmaceutical industry stand behind their product? Because they make trillions of dollars. So our Congress sold us out. Guess who pays for vaccine injury? The taxpayer. You mean to tell me I got to pay for Pfizer, Kaiser? I got to pay for their mistake? I got to pay for Merck's mistake? That's criminal.
Think about this for just a moment. You hold 100% of the risk. 100% of the risk. And the drug manufacturers hold 0% of that risk. Now that's math even I can understand. So is vaccination the new racism of the day? More accurately, the bigotry, division, and hate of the day. I don't like you because you're vaxxed. I don't like you because you're not. It's ridiculous. And as we always on the My Michelle Live show get to the God story, I don't think that's what God intended. Toronto, here's a story. Toronto, a boxing club and gym, has been banning vaccinated people from being members. The co-founder of Fearless Studios, Mohammed Abedin, had posted a statement on social media and said that basically for the safety of their members, they won't accept those who've received the experimental COVID vaccine. He said, if you got the vaccine, keep your distance from us organic people for at least 28 days. If you've gotten vaxxed and you have symptoms, contact VISP. Now, for those of you who don't know, those of you in Canada listening, you know, it's the Vaccine Injury Support Program. It's the Canadian version of VAERS, which is our reporting system in the U.S. VISP sounds cooler. Just want to let you know, Canada, way to go. But that's not the only place that's banning. That may be banning vaccinated people, but get this. Israel. Let me tell you, Israel, yes, they are banning vaccinated travelers in Israel. Let me pull up the newspaper from the Jerusalem Times, so that way you can see this for yourself. You can look it up. The Jerusalem Post, rather. Get this and listen. They are banning vaccinated travelers. The Jerusalem Post, basically the New York Times of Israel, said that vaccinated tourists will not be allowed to enter Israel. It started the 1st of August. This is the 4th of August, so just a couple of days ago. This is when we did the program today. Israel initiated a national campaign, by the way, in December of 2020. They have aggressively pushed the vaccine. With Pfizer, the mRNA COVID-19 vaccine, 90% of all of, oops, is that the wrong one? I'm sorry about that. Let's get there. No, there we go. There we go. You got the right news story. If you are looking at the video, if you're not and you want to, you can go to My Michelle Live. You might be able to see this on YouTube. Sometimes YouTube doesn't like talking about anything vaccinated against the going narrative, so it could be canceled. Oh, which, by the way, reminds me, and I'll get to this news story in a moment, you can go to My Michelle Live and get the t-shirt. You can't see it because of my background, can you? So it's the My Michelle Live Not Afraid to Be Canceled t-shirt. Never mind. I'll take down the background. You can just see the boring green screen behind me. At any rate, let's talk about Israel. So, Israel has about 90% of their adults vaccinated. It's a vast majority. Obviously, the vast majority. Well, guess what? They are having a huge upsurgence, and the vast majority of hospitalizations are from vaccinated people. Vaccinated have increased in serious morbidity, and they report with specifically the Delta variant. So they're very concerned. You can't go to Israel if you've been vaccinated. In one day, just one day, this weekend, there were 1,120 cases out of 67,000 tests, the highest since March. That was and at the beginning of June. Israel was registering 10 to 20 new cases per day. So think about that. June, they were registering 10 to 20 new cases per day. Everyone's vaccinated. Now, 1,100 cases. Other areas like Gibraltar have been bragging about everyone being vaccinated, and they're having a huge resurgence. But that's all the way across the world, Michelle. Okay, here you go. Let's take down that news story from Israel, and let's just go to our own United States, Massachusetts. Aha, there you go. It's a little closer to home, right? Hello, Massachusetts, where the CDC themselves report 74% of people in Massachusetts were vaccinated, and they're 74% of the people infected were vaccinated. What the what? Right? And even we'll go to just a city, Chicago. In NBC Chicago reported at the end of July, 169 vaccinated died, 64 seriously ill. That's just one city alone. Research it, please. And if I am off by even one person, just let us know, because we want to report accurately. We want to get all the information out, not opposed to all sides. That conversation is how things get better. The Bible actually says this, whether you're a Bible person or not: as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And I would even go as far to say, so one idea can sharpen another. If you don't have those iron sharpening iron, yeah, sometimes there's sparks, but it helps us to be sharper. It helps us to be point on. It helps us to get to the truth. I understand that the narrative right now is that it is small numbers, very small numbers. Come on, these breakouts, what they're calling them breakout cases. But we still need to talk about them. You don't shut it down. They will say, hey, it's a small number of cases relatively. The White House put out numbers that show these breakout cases, and they're not very small. And many doctors and scientists and reasonable voices of concern, and people who just like to challenge what the narrative is just to make sure. I grew up in a left-leaning, very left-leaning household, and the narrative in our house was question authority. So even those who want to question authority have said the same things. Where the few numbers of serious concerns for COVID, particularly in select groups like the elderly, shouldn't have all of us panicking. But now you're hearing that same argument from the vaccinated side. Listen.
These 125,000 fully vaccinated Americans tested positive for COVID. Oh my God, that's scary. 125,000 out of how many? 145 million? 150 million Americans? It's one of these things where when you think about it statistically, you're like, wait, that's actually nothing. Also, how many of those people got hospitalized and died? Oh, so you have a 99.999% chance of survival from any sort of breakthrough case if you're fully vaccinated?
Yes, you need to take that into consideration. However, as we go along and some of these news stories are breaking and becoming more mainstream and people are actually taking them into consideration, we're realizing that the numbers are a little bit more. But let's be honest, they are relatively, well, they are to a degree rare, unless you're looking at some of the statistics that I cited earlier from cases where Dr. Holtz was saying that 62% have at least small clots that will continue to cause problems for the next 3 to 5 years. In that case, that doesn't mean we stop talking about it. Just remember that this is about verbatim the same thing that people have been saying about COVID in general. Living in fear over relatively few risks. The risks statistically have played out to be just like the flu. Look, Florida, most of the people getting COVID in Florida are not vaccinated. And yes, a lot of folks who are very pro-vax will cite that, and they are right. It is true. Most of the people aren't vaccinated in Florida. So most of the cases are going to be from unvaccinated people. Most of the people in Massachusetts are vaccinated, and other states. That's just to name one: Israel, Massachusetts, and some of these other places. And most of the cases are from vaccinated people. So the question is, why get it? Just to be safe, to protect others. But now we know the vaccinated can be carriers as well. All right. Well, I feel better about getting the vaccine. I think I have a better chance and I protect others. Then great. You go get that vaccine. But for some of the other people who are listening to some of these stories and saying, I'm not ready yet, wait a minute, let's hold the vaccine companies, Big Pharma, accountable. Can you wrap your head around supporting them too? Let's get back to numbers. Folks, you've heard me with this old adage, figures lie, liars figure, right? So go figure. That means that you can manipulate numbers. You can use data to support your point of view. You can spin figures. It is done all the time. The bigger issue is not allowing these challenges to your facts and figures in order to keep you accountable. If you do not allow challenge, you are not a seeker of truth. Ouch! I know that's tough. It hurts, but there you go. Can I just ask you to think about one more number problem for a moment? I'm not a math girl, so we're not going to linger on numbers for very long. But Johns Hopkins published the number of deaths in 2020. Now, there has been a consistency with deaths within about 15,000 for years. So you would think that 2020 was spiked up with a number of COVID deaths. But the same number of deaths occurred in 2020, consistent with 2019, 2018, 2017, 2016, etc. But you know what didn't go up? What went down? Death by heart disease, cancer deaths, and others. There's something even more interesting in this number problem. They went down the exact proportion of those COVID number deaths that went up. What does that mean to you? I'm not going to connect those lines for you. I'd like you to just tell me what that means to you, and maybe you can educate me. I'd like that. So again, my friend, look this information up for yourself, as we do here. If I'm missing something or misreporting, you comment below. It's about finding truth. Now, if it makes you uncomfortable, as I've said before, I'm sorry. That's what freedom and freedom of information risks. It risks you being uncomfortable. We should make Big Pharma and the vaccine companies uncomfortable with any deaths and see if maybe they can tweak things or tweak warnings or information. We're pushing injections like modern drug dealers. I mean, okay, does anyone else question this? I mean, for my generation at least, Gen X, we were raised with the just say no to drugs mantra drilled into our heads, right? Putting unknown substance in our bodies is bad. Now, the unknown substances are good. I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that. I am. President Joe Biden has been pushing a door-to-door campaign to spread information about the safety and efficacy of COVID-19 vaccinations. Oh, by the way, did you see the warning signs that can be purchased on the internet? I saw it on eBay. I'll tell you in just a moment, but some are likening the going door to door to the brown shirts of the Nazi era. And for those of you who didn't get that bit in history class, the brown shirts were Hitler's militia, everyday people like you and I, falling in line and making sure everyone else fell in line as well. Family, friends, neighbors, sometimes going door to door for compliance, if you will. They wore brown uniforms, and this was back in 1921. Well, some people are a bit uncomfortable with, well, why? With what's happening, rather, with people going door to door and why, this whole brown shirt thing. Well, my friends, in case you missed this in history class as well, history does repeat itself. So that could make some people sit back and go, reporting on your neighbors, making sure everyone's in compliance. It makes people uncomfortable in a free society. Can you understand that? Or they take a more active, more humorous approach. I mentioned the sign, and I have to tell you, I thought it was kind of hilarious. You might not like it, so you can let me know what you think in the comments below. The sign read, "Door knockers, no solicitation. This property charges $50 per minute to listen to vaccine/medical advice. Payment required in advance. By knocking or ringing the doorbell, you agree to the terms stated above." So I saw a TikTok on this where a woman, you could see through their front door recording device, woman there with a clipboard, woman next to her, and she's coming up doing this, and then she looks and she reads the sign that I just read to you, and I think we're just going to skip this one. I thought it was kind of funny. But history, another lesson from history. Riddle me this for just a moment. Has there ever been a time in history where censorship, propaganda, coercion was a good thing? I want to let you hear from a conservative voice, Candace Owens. Some people hate her, some people love her, but
if you have to be persuaded, reminded, pressured, lied to, incentivized, coerced, bullied, socially shamed, guilt-tripped, threatened, paid, punished, and criminalized, if all of this is considered necessary to gain your compliance, you can be absolutely certain that what is being promoted is not in your best interest.
Well, that's some food for thought. So why suppress any of this information? Why force information on people and suppress others? I know I've been canceled. And again, I wish I should turn this thing off so you could see it. I wonder if I do it right, if you could see it right. Almost. Anyway, it's the My Michelle logo, and it says, "I'm not afraid to be canceled." You can look at it on MyMichelleLive. If you're not afraid of speaking the truth, even if it means being canceled, if you're willing to pay the price, because we live in a free society, because if the tables were on the other side, if you're, let's say, you're on the side of saying, I'm not sure about this vaccination, and all of the narrative was saying vaccinations are bad, don't ever get vaccinations, and you saw information being closed out on the efficacy of vaccinations, if you're the kind of person that would say, you know what, we should let all the information out. I may not agree with you, but I'll defend to the death your right to say what you have to say. If that's you, you need one of these t-shirts. You need to have your voice out there saying, I'm not afraid to be canceled. We're standing up for other people's rights. When my rights are violated, your rights are violated. When your rights are violated and I sit back and say, oh, really? That's too bad, darn. I can be sure that maybe it'll be my right next. So EUA, Emergency Use Authorization. It can't happen if there's an effective treatment. We have these vaccines because of the emergency use authorization. Well, first I'm going to tell you, I had COVID. Yes, I did. Achy freaking muscles. I slept pretty much for 2 weeks. I had a bit of respiratory distress, lost all of my taste and smell for the first time in my life. It was the weirdest thing, trying to eat something and all you felt was texture, no taste. If you've had COVID and you've experienced that, you know what I mean, right? Oh, it was crazy. But all in all, for me, I'm glad it was just like a bad flu. And here's why. I stocked up. I stocked up on information on how to treat. They considered my case mild. Didn't feel that mild to me, but no, it didn't require hospitalization. But I used, and I'm going to tell you what I used. Maybe it's of help to you. I'm not a doctor, so don't take this as medical advice. I'm just sharing my testimony here. I used this. Oh my goodness, what is wrong with my background? We'll see if I can do it later. So there you go. I used Oregaresp. Oregaresp, which has high mountain oregano in it. I used homeopathy, and I'm telling you, it wasn't just that. I also used standard natural protocols for treating viruses. I had cut out sugars from the first outbreak in 2020. I've been feeding my body immune building foods. And okay, Michelle, that's good. But what about medication? That's what this EUA is based on. For those who are really, really sick, not just people like you who were able to treat at home and sleep it off. Well, the truth of the matter is there are drugs that are more proven than the vaccine. Listen to Dr. Perry Corey's testimony before the Senate.
Brandy Parker McFadden sits in her Vanderbilt hospital bed unable to...
Well, I think I lost it. At any rate, I'll see if I can find that soundbite for you. It is talking about the efficacy of ivermectin prophylaxis. It is here, and this is what happens when you go live. There we go.
Brandy Parker McFadden sits in her Vanderbilt hospital bed
I must have saved it wrong. At any rate, you can do a little research yourself. Dr. Perry Corey's testimony before the Senate on ivermectin and prophylaxis. And its incredible efficacy and how he believes no one would die if they were treated. It's not the only medications, but think about this. We will use an experimental vaccine, but we will not use these. Ask yourself why. Now, it could be that people just care and they think this is the safest route. Perhaps you might consider following the money, follow the power, and be willing to ask the questions. I want to look at an even bigger concern in our final minutes together today, and it's we're going freaking ape crazy over if someone is vaccinated or if someone is not vaccinated when all of this new information is telling us, hey, vaccinated people, you're spreading and contracting as well. Well, I'm not spreading and contracting as much. Does it matter? I mean, wasn't the argument that, well, even if you could just save one life, come on. You judged, you hated before you had all the information. It's okay. It's human nature. We all do that. But it's not okay. We're allowing the banning of information. I mean, if you listen to the playbook instruction of how to demonize, divide, and conquer, I think it puts it in perspective.
In the public mind, constantly associate those who... In 1943, the following directive was issued from party headquarters to all communists in the United States. It read, "When certain obstructionists become too irritating, label them after suitable build-ups as fascist or Nazi or anti-Semitic, and use the prestige of anti-fascist and tolerance organizations to discredit them. In the public mind, constantly associate those who oppose us with those names which already have a bad smell. The association will, after enough repetition, become fact in the public mind.
Wow. Become fact in the public mind. So think about that before we start demonizing each other, because even the White House has been working with social media to stop the spread of information that goes against the going narrative, even if it is science-based and researched. Jen Psaki made a shocking admission they're actively working to censor Facebook users. There's been a plan to combat misinformation. Let government decide what you can post. Come on. Now, that may sound good if it's on your side, but what if it's working against you? That's why my freedoms and your freedoms are so intertwined. The goal is to target prominent vaccine critics via Health Misinformation Act. And the bill would create an exception to Section 230, a carve-out. It would give the Department of HHS authority to determine what counts as misinformation. Bureaucrats, not your doctor, not scientists that aren't on the HHS. If a social media site amplified the spread of anti-vax posts, they could be sued. So, my friend, remember, the shutdown of information on all social media sites can be frustrating. I was canceled asking about the coincidence of a COVID lab in Wuhan, a corona outbreak, but yet canceled. But yet, when Biden said, hey, we're going to look into this this Wuhan lab and the outbreak, suddenly social media giants were all like, oops, our bad. Yes, it is your bad. So I'm going to leave you with this soundbite from our president and what he had to say about the free distribution of information and how America must act, just not in America, in Cuba.
Sanctions on individuals that carry out the regime's abuses. At the same time, we're increasing direct support for the Cuban people by pursuing every option available to provide internet access, help the Cuban people bypass the censorship that's being mandatorily imposed. You always know something's not going well when a country will not allow their people to be engaged and be on the internet and being able to make their case known around the world.
What? Okay, soak that in. Think about it. Share this while it's still available. Please comment below and hold me accountable if I'm wrong. And love one another. Okay? That's all I'm asking too. If you're ugly in your comments, you're not gonna get a lot of traction. I don't want to hear your crap. We need to love one another. That's the true God story. Do not let the virus or a vaccine keep you from what we are here to do. Love one another as Christ loved us. I'm Michelle Mendoza. Thanks for listening today. I usually get experts and people who know a lot more than me to come on the show and share. This is one of my few times just hanging out with you, and I hope you enjoyed it. You can find us at MyMichelleLive.com.
More Health Watch at MyMichelleLive.com.